Yolanda Avila is our next speaker, and she has overcome blindness to become a dedicated community activist in Colorado Springs, serving on many civic boards and committees, to include a few: our leadership, Pikes Peak Signature Program 2015, El Paso County Citizens Academy, President of the Adult Blind Association in Colorado Springs, Colorado College Alumni of Color Organization, AMBLA-CAB Board of Trustees, and it goes on and on. I do want to mention she's on the Colorado Springs Police Department Leadership Advisory Committee as well. And she was even making a run at being elected to City Council. She graduated from Colorado College in 1985 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Economics. Today, Yolanda will share her story and overcoming obstacles. Put your hands together for Yolanda L. Avila.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Carmen. And talk about a Latina that gives her time and talents to the community. That would be Carmen Abeta. Thank you to thank you to Latina Voices for asking me to present among these amazing Latina women. We today are celebrating the legacy of Lou Gonzalez, who created a platform for us to share our voices and what we do in the community. I'd like to thank all of you, the audience, for coming out on this beautiful October morning and joining us. When I was around 7 years old, my dad pulled me aside and he said, "It's really important that you be kind to the elderly and to the blind. Be helpful." I was like, "Okay, Daddy." And I remember going to find a bandana and making a blindfold and putting it on and seeing what it was like to be blind. And after I thought maybe it was an hour, it was probably 15 seconds, I tore it off and said, "Ooh, I don't want that to happen." Now, this isn't a talk about, oh, poor me. It's about making it happen. You know, we hear through our lives, you're too young to do things. You're too old. You're not the right color. You're just too. And I'm here to say that you're just perfect. You've got everything that you need to do and have what you need. Did I go through the isms? Yes. Sexism, racism, pessimism, cynicism. For instance, when I was around 12 years old, we had just moved to the east side of town, and I asked my dad if I could go to the movies. And my dad said, "Your movies is in the sink." So I was doing the dishes, where my movies was, and my little brother, 2 years younger, comes in and says, "Daddy, the guys and I want to go to the movies." My dad goes, "How much do you need?" Puts his hands in his pocket. And I'm like, "That's not fair. How come he gets to go and I don't?" My dad said, "You're a girl," in a tone that meant end of discussion. I was going to Emerson Junior High when it first opened. And when I go to my class in 7th grade, I remember it was the first time. I was scared. It was a new area for me because I was had lived on the west side. And I went to this class, my first class, it was English class, and the teacher looks at me and says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "This is what my schedule says." He goes, "Let me see it." And I said, "Okay." So I walk up and I show my schedule. He goes, "I guess, go to the back of the room." This happened in 8th grade. It happened in 9th grade. Then I went to Mitchell High School. And one of my Latina friends moved from the west side and came to Mitchell High School. And I went to, I was so excited to see her. There was very few Latinos, and I never really saw other Latinos around. And I said, oh, let me see your schedule. I'll take you to your class. So she shows me her schedule, and I take her to a math class. And in her class, they were the few Latinos that were in school, African Americans, and kids that appeared to have disabilities. And they were literally learning 2 plus 2. And at that time, I thought, oh, that's where these teachers thought I belonged. That's the class where they thought I belonged. So in growing up, I worked with the two cultures. I had things coming from 2 cultures. And at that time, I didn't think I belonged anywhere. Because here in the US, my dad was born in Garden City, Kansas, and my mom was born in Mexico. And so here in the US, it was like, I had friends that were from North Dakota. They had never seen a Mexican. They were like, oh, your hair's so dark, your skin's so dark, and what kind of food do you eat? And I'm like, same kind of food you eat, but my mom makes fresh tortillas every day, and we have beans and chili too. And but people that didn't know me and that were rude or mean would use the derogatory terms for Mexicans and say, why don't you just go back to Mexico? Every year we vacationed in Mexico. And when I'd be in Mexico, my cousins would say, pocha, gringa. And I was like, oh, you're so weird. You're just a silly little American girl. And so I remember growing through a time that I felt like I didn't belong. By the time I reached my mid-20s, I was like, yeah, I am woman. Hear me roar. I loved it. I also felt really good about being Mexican American because I was taking the best from both cultures, I decided. Mayans had come up with the concept of 0. Aztecs were doing cesareans and brain surgery. And where else do you party down with your dead relatives for Dia de los Muertos? You're not going to miss that. And here we had the innovation, the structure, the opportunity, and being a world power. I was like, yes. So I took it all in and was like, that's me. So when I was going to Colorado College, by that time I was a single parent. And I was struggling. I had a job on top of that and had a ballet folklorico dance group. And at times I was just eating beans and potatoes, and I didn't have gas for my car, but I knew it was temporary. I said, this is temporary. I'm going to do something I love. So when I graduated, there was a recession in '85, and I couldn't find employment here. So I made my way out to Denver, where I worked for the nonprofits there. And I worked with Mikasa and Siwi, where it was getting women off of public assistance into school, job training, or just a full-time career with benefits. And I thought, it was great, but I wanted something more. I wanted something bigger. I made my way to California, and I took on a bunch of temp jobs. And I was at this one temporary agency, not temporary agency, but at a machine shop. There were 30 employees. They were like all Vietnamese, and there was a vice, what is it? Hey, my teleprompter left me. There was the president and the vice president. And they said, I was covering for somebody that was out on maternity leave. And they said, Yolanda, we want you to stay. We want you, we love the way you're running the office. And I said, isn't that illegal? And they were like, well, we'll figure out a way. And I said, no, I have my applications out, and I'm hoping to get a job with the County of Orange. And they started laughing. They thought that was hilarious. They said, that is so competitive. You need to know someone in the county to get a job in the county. I go, I'm going to be a criminal defense investigator, and I'm going to get the job. And they're like, oh, no, you're not. I go, and besides that, you're from Colorado. Nobody knows you. And I was like, okay. I didn't argue it. So 3 weeks later, I was offered the job. 5 years into the job, here I am doing the job of my dreams. I'm CSI work. As a young person, I wanted to be a teacher, and I wanted to work in the law. And here I was doing CSI work, figuring out, putting the puzzle together, and I was assigned as a field supervisor for the local university students. So I mentored and trained them and evaluated them. So I had this like great job, and in like around 1995, I'd been promoted several times. I was, I had been out in the field, and I was coming in back to work. And at that time, I'd bought a new car, Toyota Camry, and I had money in my pocket, and I called in the office. You remember those cell phones that were as heavy as a brick? Huge, that we were issued? Probably some of you weren't born, but anyway, I got off the phone. I mean, when I called, I was like, to find out if the attorneys needed anything. And as I got off the phone, I thought, wow, all my hard work has paid off. This is so awesome. I had the sunroof, moonroof open in Newport Beach, California. I had some change in my pocket. I made it. I was so grateful. The year 2000, I was diagnosed with what was called retinitis pigmentosa. Retinitis pigmentosa, when I went to see the specialist after like 3 days of testing, it's in the retina, and the doctor told me, he said, what's happening is that your rods and cones in the retina are dying off. The rods see detail and the cones see color. And I'm like, so what does that mean? He's like, that means that you're losing your vision gradually, and you will be eventually blind, totally blind. And I lost it. I just was like, okay, God, this is so not cool. Because I worked so hard to get where I was, and I had come through all these realizations. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because of the first thing my dad had said, be helpful. And it was like, now I was going to need to be helped. I wasn't going to be capable of doing a lot of things. That's what I thought at the time. I thought I was just going to probably go on disability and just live with my mom and die. And I just thought it was over, and people started to treat me a little different. And my office helped me a lot. I mean, they set me up with computers that had readers and scanners, and I still did a lot of the work. But I was in a fog, and I was like, I just didn't know, because there's things I wanted to do, and I still had a purpose, and I wanted to get out there and help the community in any way I could. And my daughter did a leadership class, and she said, I saw how it impacted her, and she asked me to do it, and I thought, I did it for her. And I did this class. And when I came out of that class, I realized that my 5 senses are just the tip of the iceberg of who I am. Because we are, as human beings, we are soul, mind, and body success-breeding machines. And I realized that even though my sight was gone, that I had still all my experiences and knowledge that I could bring to the table. And so after that, I just hit it. I learned all the blind skills that I could learn. I still was me, Yolanda, outgoing. I wanted to help the community. I ended up retiring after 21 years, and I decided that I wanted to live close to my mom here in Colorado. She's now 94. But before that, I bought me a townhome in California. I bought a home here before I came so that I could have a place to be right next to my mom, 6 miles away. And it was just, it's been a great experience. But coming to Colorado Springs, the city that I grew up in and love, the third of the city lights were out. And buses were only running Monday through Friday. And it had deteriorated. I live on the southeast side of town, and I was like, what happened to my city? Because when I was a little kid, we'd go to different cities, and they would seem to kind of be dirty and stuff. And Springs was pristine. I was like, what happened? It wasn't being maintained. And I knew I had to do something. Therefore, I immediately got involved in the community and see where I could help with transportation. As a consequence, we are now having bus transportation 7 days a week, evening routes. And I see that I have a lot of work to do. So even though I've been, in my life, I've been trying to, people have tried to define me as just a woman, a person of color, not being able to do things. I've defied that. And I know that I can do it. I will not be defined by my blindness. I will be defined by who I am able to be and do with all that I have. And I want you to all know that all of you sitting in those chairs have exactly the same thing. Thank you so much for your time and attention.